Hello everyone, welcome to this video. So if you are planning to write the PRINCE2 certification exam, this video will provide you with the entire roadmap on how to prepare for the exam and how, with the right coaching and guidance, you can ace the certification on your very first attempt. Let's get started. Now, PRINCE2, as you know, is one of the top tier project management certifications worldwide, right? Especially in the UK, across the European Union, in India, and in Australia, PRINCE2 is not just recognized, it's often expected from recruiters. So hiring managers in these regions, particularly in the government sector or the public sector, civil services, consulting, and large enterprise environments, actively look for PRINCE2 certification on your CV. You can notice the same if you study some LinkedIn jobs as well from these regions. Now, if you are just getting started on your PRINCE2 certification journey, you obviously will have many questions in your mind. So for example, Ray, how do I even begin preparing for this? Where do I start? How long will it take? And what exactly does the journey look like from day one to the exam day? Well, that's exactly what this video is going to answer for you. So make sure you watch it till the very end. Let's get into it. Alright, so let's start with stage 1, and this covers your first 2 weeks of preparation. And the focus for these couple of weeks is to understand the DNA of the exam fully, be it the foundation module or the practitioner module for the PRINCE2 certification exam suite. So weeks 1 and 2 are not about actually studying the contents within the syllabus of the exam, right? They are entirely about understanding the exam in its structure, in its format, what's being tested and how it's being tested, okay? Think of it as your initial intelligence gathering phase for the exam. Let's try to break this down even further. The PRINCE2 Foundation exam consists of 60 multiple choice questions which you need to complete within 60 minutes. It's a closed book exam, which means no reference materials would be allowed. The passing score of the exam is 60%, which translates to 36 correct answers out of the 60 questions. Now, the foundation exam tests your understanding and your recalling ability of the PRINCE2 framework, i.e., its principles, its practices, and its processes. It's not trying to trick you, okay? It's just checking whether you understand the methodology fully, okay? Now that can be plain and simple on the surface, but the type of questions can be quite tricky sometimes, okay? I would encourage you to check out the practice questions videos published on my channel already, where I have solved some sample questions for the PRINCE2 foundation exam. Now moving on, the PRINCE2 practitioner exam, which is the highest level of certification within the PRINCE2 suite, is a different beast altogether, okay? It consists of 70 objective testing questions and you get approximately 2.5 hours to complete it. It's an open book, i.e. you are allowed to bring your official PRINCE2 Managing Successful Projects manual into the exam, okay, whilst you are writing the exam. However, don't mistake an open book exam for an easy exam, okay? The PRINCE2 practitioner exam tests your ability to apply PRINCE2 concepts to real-world project scenarios. You need to think, you need to infer, reason, okay? Not just flip through pages of the manual to find the answers. The passing score for the PRINCE2 practitioner is 60%, which means 42 correct answers out of the 70 questions. Make sense? Now, in terms of the syllabus and the structure, both the exams in 2026 are based on the current 7th edition of PRINCE2, which was released in 2023. The framework is built around 7 principles, 7 practices. Now, these practices previously were called themes, and 7 processes. Now I won't get into the full details for each one of them here because I've actually made dedicated videos on my YouTube channel already on these topics. I'll leave those links in the description below so that you can go through them as part of your week 1 and week 2 study plan. Now here is something practical I'd also recommend for this phase, okay? I have put together a PRINCE2 self-study starter kit, which is a structured resource designed specifically to help you organize your preparation right from the very beginning. It will provide you clarity on what to focus on, in what sequence, and avoids the overwhelm that most candidates feel when they first look at the PRINCE2 manual. If you are interested, the details are in the description box as well. So look, the key goal for these 2 weeks is very simple, okay? So by the end of week 2, you should be able to clearly articulate what the exam tests, how it tests it, and what your personal weak areas are likely to be going into the study phase of the PRINCE2 exam. This level of self-awareness is what separates candidates who pass on their first attempt from those who simply don't. Now, if you find this kind of structured guidance useful and want more of it, make sure you subscribe to this channel, Project Mastery with Ray, where I regularly post free content on PRINCE2 exam preparation. Hit that bell icon so you do not miss out on any new videos, okay? It really does help me to understand that this content is adding value to you and motivates me to create more content like this for you on YouTube. Alright, so now that you have used week 1 and 2 to fully understand the exam structure, the format, and where you stand before you even start the exam preparation, it's time to get into the actual studying, okay? And this is where the real work begins. So weeks 3 to week 5 are your core study weeks for the PRINCE2 foundation level. If you are preparing for the practitioner level, you can get one additional week here to cover the deeper application level content for the PRINCE2 practitioner exam suite. So let's try to break this down properly. Now, the official PRINCE2 study manual is called Managing Successful Projects with PRINCE2. And yes, you absolutely need to study it from start to finish. There is really no shortcut here, okay? Whether you are going for the foundation module or the practitioner module, this manual will stay as your primary reference material, okay? Which means the 7 principles, the 7 practices, and the 7 processes, you need to understand them all. And more importantly, for the practitioner level, you need to be able to apply them to real-world project scenarios. Now, here is something I want to address directly, okay? Because I get asked this question a lot. Ray, can I just self-study for PRINCE2? Or do I really need to go through a training provider? Look, I'll be completely honest with you, okay? Technically, there is no formal training prerequisite to sit for the PRINCE2 foundation exam. So in theory, yes, you could self-study. However, here is what I want you to think about carefully, okay? The PRINCE2 framework has a very specific structure, language, and logic to it. Concepts like management products, the tailoring of the processes, project roles, i.e. senior supplier, senior user, and how the practices and the roles interact with each other across the project life cycle. These concepts are not always intuitive the first time you read them in the manual, okay? So without proper guidance, it's very easy to misunderstand how the framework fits together, which of course then shows up in your exam results, right? And this is where training through an accredited training organization or an ATO genuinely makes a difference. ATOs are officially approved by Axelos and PeopleCert, who are the governing bodies for the PRINCE2 certification globally. They use verified, up-to-date training materials aligned directly to the current exam syllabus. Through an ATO, you get structured learning, the right exam-focused preparation, and most importantly, your exam voucher will also come through an ATO as well, okay? You cannot book a PRINCE2 exam directly without going through the PeopleCert's official channels, and in most cases your ATO will handle that exam voucher redemption process for you, and it will be cost effective for you as well. Now here I want to give you a balanced picture because there are several ATO training options available to you as a PRINCE2 exam candidate, and I want you to make the right decision for your specific situation. So option 1 is the classroom or live online training through an ATO. So you get direct interaction, real-time question and answers, and a structured learning environment. It's simply great for candidates who prefer guided learning and of course have a budget for it. Now option 2 is somewhat self-paced and hybrid online training through an ATO. So this is more flexible and usually more cost effective, while still giving you access to ATO approved training materials, the exam voucher, and often a one-to-one interaction with the trainer over Q&A sessions. So if you are working full-time and you need flexibility to study the entire syllabus of the PRINCE2 exam at your own pace, this is often the most practical route, and my training organization, Project Mastery Pathways, which is also an ATO, delivers training via this training route. Now option 3 is fully self-paced study using just the manual and YouTube videos. Now of course it is possible, okay, but I'd only recommend this route if you are already quite experienced in project management and have a strong ability to self-structure and self-discipline your entire learning regime, okay? And of course you should have at least 4 to 6 months to spare for exam preparation, because this entire self-study regime is quite time taking, okay, because you are doing everything by yourself, so you need to factor in that time. So it's the highest risk option for me, okay, and not the one I would generally recommend for first-time candidates who are prepping up for the PRINCE2 exam. Now a quick word on something you might come across while searching for resources, okay? So you may find PRINCE2 courses on platforms such as Udemy. However, chances are very high that those courses are not ATO registered. So they might give you some background knowledge, but they would not give you an exam voucher for sure. And they are certainly not aligned to PeopleCert's officially approved curriculum. So if you want to use them at all, please use them as supplementary content, okay? But please note that they cannot replace ATO training for your actual exam preparation and registration process. Please keep that in mind, okay? Now, one practical and very important action point for this phase. So by week 3 or week 4, you should be redeeming your exam voucher through your ATO. So please do not leave this for too late. Book your exam date during this phase and definitely not at the end of your preparation, because having a confirmed exam date creates a real deadline for yourself. It keeps you accountable, it focuses your study plan, and it removes the classic trap of indefinitely delaying your exam because you don't feel really ready enough, right? Look, nobody ever feels 100% ready, okay? That's the truth. So please set the date and let that date drive your exam preparation. I hope this makes sense. So by the end of this study phase, your goal is quite straightforward. You should have covered the full syllabus at least once, and you have had a good working understanding of all the 7 principles, 7 practices, and the 7 processes of PRINCE2, and you have your exam date confirmed and locked in. Alright, so you have understood the exam, you have covered the syllabus, your exam date is booked. Now it's the time to test yourself, right? And this will be the phase where you would be actually be able to assess how well you are prepared for the exam. So weeks 6 and 7 are your mock testing phases, okay? Consider one additional week on top if you are preparing for the practitioner exam. Now the goal of this mock tests or mock exam phase is not to solve as many mock questions as possible, okay? Now I have seen candidates proudly tell me that they have done like 200 or 300 or even 500 questions, okay, practice questions in their mock phase, and then they still struggle in the actual exam. Now the obvious reason for this is because they were treating mock tests like a volume exercise, okay? Just hammering through questions, noting the correct answer and moving on. Now that's honestly not preparation, okay? It's just keeping yourself busy in some way or the other. The real purpose of mock tests is three things, okay? Assimilation, analysis, and synthesis. Let me explain what I mean. So assimilation means you are genuinely absorbing and internalizing the concepts that the questions are testing, not just memorizing which option is correct, but also understanding why the option is correct within the logic of the PRINCE2 framework. Now moving on, analysis means that every time you get a question wrong, or even when you get one question right but you weren't really sure about it, you have to stop, you have to go back to the manual or your training notes, and you would try to understand exactly where your thinking diverged from the correct answer. Was it a conceptual misunderstanding? Did you confuse two similar roles or processes? Did you misread the scenario? Okay, this kind of deep, honest review is where the real learning happens. Think of it like a proper lessons learned exercise in project management, right? You are not just noting down what went wrong. You are actually trying to figure out why it went wrong and correcting your approach moving forward, right? And synthesis means you are starting to see the bigger picture. How do the 7 principles connect to the 7 practices? How does the business case practice thread through the entire project life cycle? How do the management products support the processes? Okay, so when your understanding reaches this level of interconnectivity, you are genuinely ready for the exam, but not before that, okay? Now, in terms of where to source good mock questions, your ATO's approved training materials should be your primary source here. They are aligned to the actual exam format and the difficulty level, and they use the correct PRINCE2 terminology and scenario style. So please use those authentic sources first. Now, in addition to that, I have made several free videos on my YouTube channel that would walk you through sample PRINCE2 style questions, explaining the thinking behind the answers, because as we have discussed, that's what is most important, right? They will really give you a good feel of how the exam questions actually are worded and what the examiners are really looking for. I leave those links in the description section below, okay? So do check them out because they'll give you a practical sense of the exam experience without even costing you a penny. Now, one thing that I want you to do during this phase that most candidates skip is to write timed mock exams, okay? Don't sit there solving question after question with no clock running, okay? The foundation exam gives you 60 minutes for 60 questions. That's 1 minute per question. The practitioner exam, on the other hand, gives you about 2.5 hours for 70 questions. So these are not particularly generous time allocations, especially when the scenario-based practitioner questions can be fairly involved and might catch you out many a times. So if you have never practiced under timed conditions before your actual exam day, the pressure of the clock on the exam day alone can derail your performance, regardless how well you know the content, okay? Makes sense? So simulate exam conditions whilst you are preparing during this phase, okay? Sit down, set your timer, isolate yourself in a room and go through a full set of questions in one sitting. Then you need to spend equal time, if not more, reviewing your answers and understanding your errors. So this overall review process and creating error logs is as valuable as the test itself. So the target by the end of this phase should be that you should be consistently scoring about 70% or 80% in your timed mocks, okay? Remember, the pass marks for the PRINCE2 exam is 60% and you want a comfortable buffer going into the actual exam, right? Alright, we are now in the final leg, week 8 and week 9 of your exam preparation, and these are your final preparatory phases, okay? Maybe you can add a couple of weeks on top if you're writing the practitioner module. And here I would want you to treat this period with a completely different mindset compared to everything you have done so far till now. Now, if you think about it, the studying here is largely done, right? So you have completed the syllabus, the mocks are done. So what this phase is all about is consolidation, sharpness, and composure. And honestly, this is the phase where most candidates either gain a significant edge or quietly lose all they have already built upon, okay? So let me walk you through exactly what you need to focus here at this stage, okay? Firstly, your revision notes. So by this point in your preparation, you should have been building condensed revision notes all along, right? If you haven't, now it's the time to create those urgently. So these are not really lengthy summaries. So they are the most important, sharp, concise pointers and highly personalized for your own understanding from the topics of the exam syllabus which you were not confident on. So let's say a couple of pages per practice or per process or per principle is a reasonable target, okay? Not more than that. So the key roles, the key management products, the key decision points, boundaries between management stages. So you need to capture these essentials in a format your brain can scan quickly and confidently during the revision stages, okay? So the goal here is that when you pick up these notes in the final weeks of your exam preparation, you are not learning anything new. You are simply reinforcing and activating what you already know. So that's a very different cognitive exercise, and it's a much more efficient use of your time during the penultimate stages of your exam. Secondly, your error log. Now, if you have followed the approach I described in stage 3 for your mock exams, you have been maintaining a record of questions you got wrong and the reasoning behind each of those errors, right? So in these final couple of weeks, your error log becomes your most important revision tool, and you need to go through it systematically. The patterns you see in your errors are your personal weak spots, and those weak spots need targeted attention right now, okay? Not a reread of the entire manual, okay? And that's how you drive efficiency during this phase. So this method of targeted evidence-based revision is far more effective than doing another round of generic studying. And of course, please try it yourself and you will see that it is giving you a much better return on the limited time you have left during the final days of your exam. Makes sense? Thirdly, and this one is pretty non-negotiable, the importance of planning your exam day logistics. Now, since all the PRINCE2 exams are remotely proctored, you need to finalize the location from where you would like to write the exam, okay? It might be from your home, might be from a workstation, might be from, let's say, a hotel room, whatever it is, please finalize that. Check the stability of the internet, check your laptop, check your surroundings, plan your calendar for that day. Basically, think of any risk that might goof up your exam slot and plan mitigation measures around those. Now, in terms of the mindset during these final days, please stop trying to learn anything new during this phase, okay? Your job in the last few days before the exam is simply to stay sharp and stay calm. Review your revision notes, glance through your error log one final time, maybe run through a short 20-question timed practice test to keep your exam rhythm active, okay? And then just let it go. Over-studying in this final 48 hours of your exam typically creates anxiety, creates confusion, and definitely will not provide you with any additional confidence. And here is something I say to every candidate I coach personally, okay? A pass in PRINCE2 is a pass, okay? Whether you score 60% or you score 85%, the PRINCE2 certification treats you as identical. So walk into that exam room focused on answering each question to the best of your ability in that moment in time, okay? And please do not get obsessed over your overall score as you go. Okay. Now, speaking of personal coaching, for those of you who would like a more guided, structured experience through this entire journey, as an accredited training organization with Axelos and PeopleCert, I do offer professional one-to-one Prince2 coaching and training programs where I work with you directly from exam registration all the way through to your exam day. You get ATO approved training materials, your exam voucher, and personalized support tailored to your pace and schedule. So if that's something you would like to explore, the details are in the description box below. Please drop me an email and me or one of my team members will reach out to you. So that was your complete week by week study plan for preparation of the Prince2 Foundation or the Prince2 Practitioner exam in 2026. So let me quickly bring it all together for you, okay? To help you do a quick recap. Week 1 and 2, understand the exam before you even start studying for it. Know the structure, the format, and your starting point or your baseline before you even start exam preparation. Weeks 3 to 5 plus 1 week extra if you are going for the practitioner. Study the syllabus systematically through an ATO approved training and get your exam voucher booked during this exam phase for your exam day. Weeks 6 and 7, again, might be a couple of additional weeks for practitioner. Work through with your mock tests, focusing on in-depth analysis and assimilation, not just volume of questions. And finally, week 8 and 9, revise smartly using your notes and your error logs. Sort out your exam day logistics well in advance and walk into the exam with confidence. So for the foundation module alone, you are looking roughly around 8 to 9 weeks of focused preparation. And for the foundation plus the practitioner module, you might plan about 9 to 12 weeks depending on your experience level and the hours you can commit each week into the exam preparation. So these are quite realistic and achievable timelines provided you follow the structure and stay consistent, okay? Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.